there's been a great deal of speculation as to whether I would run for president. And if I were willing to absolutely rule that out, I could keep doing this show. But I can't make such a declaration.
Former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee last night on Fox News revealing that he's thinking about a run in 2016. Let's bring in the roundtable. Robert Costa from the Washington Post, Greta Van Susteren from Fox News, television and radio host Tavis Smiley, author of Death of a King, the real story of Dr. Martin Luther King's final year, and Margaret Hoover, CNN contributor and author of American Individualism, How a New Generation of Conservatives Can Save the Republican Party. And Greta, I have to talk with you first.
I knew I'd get this one first.
You knew you'd be first. Was Mike Huckabee sort of pushed out?
Oh, no.
Not at all.
Oh, actually, I don't think that at all. He's very, well, first of all, I don't have the inside scoop. I'm not in management. I'm labor. But I will tell you that I do know this, that he's extremely well liked by his colleagues, and his show is successful. What I do think is that the Fox News has taken a very hard line on people who are, who might be running. As he said last night in his statement when he left the network, he said that he could make up his mind. So, he's leaving. So I would not be surprised if he's running. He doesn't commit financial suicide. Fox pays quite well, and they were quite happy with him. So while I don't have the inside scoop, my guess is that he is running, and my guess is that he was not pushed out because of his success at the network and the fact people just like him.
She made that very clear, what she thinks. Doesn't she, Margaret? I want to turn to you. An Iowa Senate exit poll, it was Republicans. Who do you want to be the GOP 2016 nominee? Huckabee, 19%, topping the list. Rick Perry, 17%. Jeb Bush, 14%. Rand Paul, 14%. Chris Christie, 12%. So what happens if Huckabee gets in?
If Huckabee gets in, you have a fight in the Iowa Republican caucuses over who is going to solidify the evangelical base of that portion of the electorate. If you have Huckabee in and Santorum in and some of these others who really cater to the right wing of the Republican caucuses in Iowa, suddenly you may have a fight over the right and allow for a centrist to come up through the center, not dissimilarly from how George W. Bush did in 2000. What I think it does is potentially divide the conservative vote and actually make way for a center-right candidate to actually make some headway in Iowa for the first time, a Jeb Bush or a Chris Christie.
Tavis, you're nodding your head there in agreement?
Well, I was listening because it occurs to me that Mike Huckabee, since it says Sunday, Martha, is an ordained minister, and there's a Bible verse that I'm fond of that says that the people perish where there is no vision. Without a vision, the people perish. If I can tweak that a bit, without a vision, the party will perish. And it doesn't matter whether it's Jeb Bush or Mike Huckabee. If you don't have a vision for how to expand this party in the most multicultural, multiracial, multi-ethnic America ever, it's not going to happen. So you can win these local races, you can win governorships, you can win congressional seats. You can't win the big one in 2016 if you can't expand the base of the party. I will tell you this. Jeb Bush is dangerous because he can expand that vote where the Hispanic Party is concerned, we all know. And Mike Huckabee, in 2008, I moderated two presidential debates in the primaries for my network PBS. The Democrats all met here at Howard University in Washington. They all showed up. Republicans were invited to join us at Morgan State in Baltimore. The top three runners at the time wouldn't come. John McCain didn't come. Mitt Romney didn't come. Fred Thompson wouldn't come. The first one to RSVP was Mike Huckabee. So I think he gets it and has an opportunity to expand the base.
Sounds like he definitely gets it. And I want to turn to you, Robert. And I do want to point out that you're a former This Week intern.
Okay, yes.
You have come a long way. You have come a long way. Now, Jeb Bush resigned from corporate and nonprofit boards this week, but he's not showing up at the big event in Iowa. What do you make of what's happening? What are people telling you? Because I know you have a lot of great sources now.
Well, I spoke to Representative Steve King, who's hosting this confab in Des Moines in late January, and he said he did invite Governor Bush, but Governor Bush got back to him through emissaries, didn't give Representative King a call, and I think it really sends a signal about how Bush may run his campaign. King, of course, is an immigration hardliner. Bush is not. Bush may look to avoid Iowa if Huckabee's coming in. As Margaret said, a lot of conservatives are crowding that space. Maybe Jeb looks to New Hampshire, goes into Florida. But Huckabee, he has accepted Representative King's invitation. And you're going to see others like Chris Christie, who's appearing at that event. They're really looking to King as a power broker and someone they're going to court. But Iowa, if it becomes really a mess, maybe the race becomes a little more extended. And I think Huckabee's play, I talked to his advisors last night on the phone, maybe he could win Iowa just like he did in 2008. Doesn't do so well in New Hampshire, but he comes into South Carolina. It's another conservative state.
Greta, any surprises out there? Anybody who will get in or who won't get in?
I actually think the big surprise is going to be in the Democratic side of the ledger, is whether or not, of course, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton runs. I'm actually not convinced. I'm not convinced she's going to run, and I think the big sleeper candidate is actually going to be Governor Martin O'Malley of Maryland. I realize that the governorship was lost to the Republicans in Maryland this last run, but whoever takes Iowa, and if you look, 2008, Huckabee took it for the Republicans, 2012, Santorum, it really takes someone who's going to go there and knock on the doors. I think that's what we have to keep our eye on. And Governor Martin O'Malley, he's been there a number of times. He's a knock-on-the-door type candidate. He's not the kind, so I think that he may be a sleeper.
Let's switch up to Capitol Hill from the White House. We're probably getting a little ahead of ourselves on that. You heard the Republican panel. We just had the new members. Does that encourage you that they can get rid of the dysfunction?
It does on the one hand, and they do. There is really a new possibility here with a Republican Senate and a Republican legislature. The most productive times legislatively in our country have been when you have had a unified body in the legislature and the opposite party in the executive branch. I'd like to get back to something Tavis said. I think for leadership in the Republican Party, what we really need is Republicans who are willing to disavow the worst traditions in American history and really align themselves with the best traditions in the Republican Party. And that means building a base and building a party that represents the history of the Republican Party. Yes, last night Ed Brooke died. Ed Brooke was the first African-American senator elected popularly to the United States Senate. And Republicans always represented the first in every minority group in the Senate: women, African Americans, Hispanics, Asian Americans. This is a party that has in its DNA the ability to build out beyond its base, and we should draw on that history to build into the 21st century party.
Very quickly, Margaret, I totally agree with everything you basically said here, except that the party missed an opportunity to do just what you said when Mr. Scalise got in trouble, and they rallied around him rather than condemn what he did. They missed a moment to do that, number one. Number two, to Martha, to your question about whether or not this dysfunction can stop, it depends on three things. Number one, Mitch McConnell, the leader, is the same guy who a few years ago said his number one job was to defeat Barack Obama. If that attitude persists, nothing is going to happen, number one. Number two, I'm concerned about how the agenda gets hijacked, as your piece reported earlier, by these Republicans in the Senate who have presidential aspirations, and how that might impact and affect the game. And
I want to turn to Robert, the objective reporter here. And again, you have been working your sources on the Hill and talking to a lot of officials. I want to quickly touch on Scalise and whether that has whether that has legs, really.
Speaking of Scalise's allies and his aides in the last couple days, you really feel because he has expressed regret about the event in 2002 and about his appearance, they believe he will be able to move on. And they think Scalise, because he's number 3, he's not number 1 or number 2, he's not going to be a total distraction for the party. And they think because he got out early and issued that statement, he'll be okay.
Greta, you think he's a distraction?
I think he's a distraction, but I think this is a huge missed opportunity for the Republican Party.
Exactly.
Like, the Republican Party wanted to send a message out there, and I don't know whether it's fair to Congressman Scalise or not fair to him or whatever, but associating with David Duke is grossly unwise. I mean, there's no secret who David Duke is. I realized this 12 years ago. He says he was there. Some people say he wasn't there. I don't know what that is. But if you want to send a message to the American people, Republicans and Democrats, this would have been the opportunity to say he should have, step aside, whether it's fair or not, and send a message that, we're not going to have this distraction. We really do want to have everybody on board.
And to say you didn't know. See, the problem is Representative Love a moment ago said he had humility and he apologized. He did that. The question is whether or not you knew. And to say that you didn't know, nobody buys
Here's what we know.
He's also not the first one. He's not the first one to associate with.
Let's be very clear about what he did.
But to stand behind, I agree, Greta. I agree.
But on the other side, we can on the electorate,
but to stand behind this one guy, risking the party expanding its base, that's my issue.
Let's be clear about what he did.
So many people who are saying so many awful things, Democrats, Republicans, associating with the worst.
It's not that he said something awful.
I know, which is why it would have been smart to step aside.
What he didn't have was the moral courage to disavow that political ideology, even in 1998, not just 2002. It was back in 1998 where he said, I'm a lot like David Duke. I just don't have the baggage. That's the problem is the moral courage to disassociate yourself with those heinous political ideologies, and that plagues the Republican Party. That is not good
and the moral
for a
courage
party
would
that
be
wants to be.
the moral courage would be to step down, because, you know, it sends a very bad message to the American people. And I also think there are a lot of people on the Democratic side of the aisle could likewise send a message too. This is an equal opportunity, you know, disgrace with politicians.
And I should point out, Greta, you're a reporter as well, an objective reporter. Robert, I want to end with you about this week we're going into, this very important week. What do they have to do in this week?
Really keep an eye on the new Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell. He's trying to take the reins of the party and show on health care, on trade, and numerous other issues that the party ahead of 2016 can govern responsibly, move away from the shutdown past, and really cast a new image for the party. And I think that's the goal with a lot of the legislation they're going to be trying to pass in both chambers.
And the next year?
Predictions? In 2016, I think you're going to see a crowded field, one of the biggest fields in a long time, and I think you're going to see Congress really work with the presidential candidates to try to come up with a coherent agenda.